we will start tonight's meeting of Health, Wellbeing, Environment and Scrutiny Committee, but we will start with a minute's silence for our friend and our Mayor, Councillor Barry Panter. And just a reminder, there is a book of condolence still open in the foyer if you wish to sign it. We'll go on to tonight's agenda. So Health, Wellbeing and Environment Scrutiny Committee. Item 1 is apologies. Do we have any apologies? No, thank you very much. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest for tonight? Councillor Northcote.
The usual one, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I'm the portfolio holder for public health, integrated care systems and safeguarding at the County Council.
Thank you, Councillor. Item 3 is minutes of previous meeting on pages 3 to 8 of your agenda. Are we happy to take those minutes as an accurate record? Councillor Northcote.
Just a typo at, I think it's on page 5, item 7, tree risk management strategy, third paragraph down. I think that should say Madeley, not Medley.
That's, yeah, well found. Thank you. That will be corrected.
Thank you.
Okay, apart from that, are we happy to accept the minutes as accurate record? Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll go on to item 4, which is a Newcastle Fire Station update and performance. We have our Deputy Chief Fire Officer with us and our Station Manager for the Newcastle Fire Station. So page 9 to 16 has a copy of their report, and I will hand over to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good evening, everybody. I hope everybody's well. Thank you very much for inviting Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service back to talk with you all. So, as the Chair says, I'm Glyn Loosney, the Deputy Chief Fire Officer, and with me is Mark Tatham, who's the Station Manager in charge of Newcastle Fire Station. So, you may recall that I've been here on 2 occasions over the recent months, just to update on the 3-person crewing response for the on-call firefighters, which certainly prompted some interest from yourselves as a committee. So I was asked just to do a brief report on how that's going, and so I intend to talk through that. Before I then hand over to my colleague Mark, who will update on performance and any other matters as well affecting your local fire station at Newcastle. And I know that that is on the back of a visit to the site, which I know Mark welcomed, and hopefully that will prompt some interesting questions for both of us for tonight. So we did send out the briefing. So that's just as a real summary note to guide you through the update. But of course, I really would welcome any questions, either as we go along or at the end. I'll allow the Chair to dictate that. So in terms of the 3-person crewing update, just a reminder that this commenced as a trial on the 1st of June in 2023, following feedback from our on-call firefighters across Staffordshire. And the trial's objective was to improve appliance availability for those occasions where we were struggling to get the minimum number of 4 firefighters to have that appliance, what we say is on the run, That means ready to respond to emergencies across the service or in the locality. And this was deemed that if we can get 3 firefighters with the right skills mix ready to be mobilised, they could get to incidents faster than the next nearest appliance. So this was all about getting that crew to make earlier interventions, or indeed to get them as the second or third appliance to an existing appliance, so they've got a backup team on the ground making interventions quicker. And I just wanted to remind the committee as well, if I may, and I've been quite robust in the messaging around that, that the service is not in any way making any savings from this. We are not reducing the crew from 4 to 3. If there's 4 or more available, that is great. That is what we want. And we're continuing to recruit and invest in the on-call service to achieve that. This is for those limited occasions where we can't get it because people have got, in the on-call service that is, secondary jobs or the commitments, families. So aligning the availability is a difficult challenge. So this is only at times where the on-call teams cannot achieve 4 or more firefighters, but they can get 3 available, would they be utilised. And the trial, I have to say, over a period of 18 months demonstrated that using firefighters in this way made a massive difference. So they were going to a wide range of incidents and getting our emergency responders with their kit and appliance there quicker than before. So just in terms of what we found, just a quick summary. First of all, I'm going to talk about some of the concerns. So there were some concerns about all the incident types that firefighters go to and whether a crew of 3 would be appropriate. Most controversial, I would say, was around house fires where there are people trapped inside. And I'm sure committee members will remember myself and the Chief Fire Officer talking about that. And this is because firefighters inherently want to make sure when they get there, they have got the tools to do the job and they've got the right resources. And in a situation where there is a person requiring an immediate rescue from a burning building, really you need 2 qualified breathing apparatus wearers to be complemented with the incident commander and driver. So that created its difficulties. So we did take that out as a criteria that the crews would not get mobilised as part of the initial attendance for that reason. We continue to listen to feedback throughout the trial, and that helped to shape the final decision, which I will come on to in a moment. But there was one prominent health and safety concern that was widely misreported through the media involving an incident at Lichfield. And this involved a crew of 3 attending first at the scene at a fire that involved actually a boiling pan that had boiled dry on a stove, but it was widely misreported in the media that this was a burning building that required breathing apparatus teams to go in. In fact, the pan had self-extinguished and the team were committed and they did remove a casualty from the property, but they didn't require breathing apparatus because there was just not the smoke. It wasn't the risk that it was painted to be in the media. So having said that, that was a breach of our policy in its strictest sense. So there was a review, there was learning shared, and that's why I'm being very open around the type of things that have happened during the trial where we've been able to learn from that. And we always try and identify the steps could be taken to address, any potential risk to firefighters. But we also do accept that our job is inherently risky, but it's down to us as service managers to make sure that that is managed, to coin the old health and safety phrase, so far as is reasonably practicable. So, again, committee members will remember that we spoke about a date in December of last year where all the trials evaluation will come to Service Delivery Board, our governance meeting internally, with the view of making a decision of whether the trial would be stopped and not adopted in its form as per the trial, or any further amendments made to the trial before being adopted. Now, in terms of the decision that was made, that was really backed up in terms of the performance data. And the performance data I've refreshed to give you a more up-to-date picture since December. So this takes us from the date of the trial, 1st of June 2023, up until the 20th of February. And you can see over that period, there was 729 emergency incidents that a 3-person crew attended. And over 200 occasions, the 3-person crew was actually there first. And you will have heard that that gives us an average time where that crew has been there a considerable length of time, close to 10 minutes before the next supporting appliance, and been able to make interventions. 3-person crews have also been utilised where they can actually be brought together to make different crews and to cover areas to give fire cover when there's a gap. For example, if 3 or 4 appliances are sent to an incident on the motorway, we have to move our appliances around strategically to give the best fire cover that we can based upon the risk. So on 497 occasions, they've also been utilised in such a way to provide that assurance and cover. Now, in terms of the incident types that 3-person crews have attended, it's a real varied risk, over 30 to 40 different classifications of incidents, from animal rescues to assisting ambulance to various types of fires. But I just pointed out the top 3, those being fires, road traffic collisions, and automatic fire alarms activating. But overall, the impact that we're seeing is not just in terms of a faster response to the public, it's actually improving the morale of our on-call staff. Why? Because they're getting utilised more. They join the service to respond to their communities. And so it's improving their morale. And as a result of that, that equals goodwill. Goodwill converts quite nicely into giving more hours and more availability for the fire service. So since this trial, one of the unintended but positive consequences is we've seen an increase of over 11% in on-call availability across the board. So we're really pleased about that. So just going back to the meeting then in December, on the basis of that performance data, the evidence that we had, but equally as important, we did actually canvass our on-call workforce for the 3rd time and gave them a vote. And the majority voted in favour of retaining the policy. Finally, the policy was approved, but we did make some more modifications as a result of that engagement with the workforce and with the representative bodies. So there are a number of incidents where 3-person crews will not be mobilised as part of the initial attendance, those being house fires with persons reported, as I've said, house fires per se, just in case there's persons reported, fires in tall buildings or low-rise buildings because they are extremely demanding on the first crews. I know you're all very much aware of the inquiries into Grenfell. Public disorder events. Now, again, I know you'll be aware of the issues that we had in August. Okay, so I was very much involved with that personally, and the crews were. So again, where it's really high risk and we need the numbers, they won't be mobilised in the first attendance. Same with fires involving factories and where we have confirmed marauding terrorist attacks taking place. Hopefully, we don't get that, but we're geared up for that if we are. However, as soon as there are crews in attendance and based on the intelligence and information, they can be utilised as supporting crews. So, broadly speaking, that's a summary of where we are. I'd like to give assurance to the committee that it's something that we monitor on a regular basis, on a daily basis. Those stats are changing, and we keep it under review through our governance boards to ensure that any issues arise can be dealt with swiftly, effectively, and co-jointly with our workforce and representative bodies. So I'm happy to pause there. And Chair, I don't know if you want to invite questions on that specific or you wish to go over to the Newcastle update locally from Mark.
I think we can take a couple of questions if you want to, about specifically on the 3-person crewing you've been trialling. So if anyone has any questions for Glyn, councillors, please raise your hand. Councillor Rees.
Hi, thanks for coming here again tonight. Really good to see you. Just a couple of questions. So when you're going to kind of car crashes, you mentioned around there's kind of 2 qualified people on 3-person crews. Is that would that be sufficient for kind of, I don't know, cutting somebody out of a car, for instance?
Yeah, it's a very different situation, Councillor, and I'll try to explain this. So the bit that I was referring to was having 2 qualified breathing apparatus to go in a burning building, if you like, to do a search or rescue. When it comes to road traffic collisions, there is less of a risk to our firefighters, i.e. they're not going into a burning environment. Yeah. But still, it is still a roadway. There's obviously been an incident there. So there is a level of risk that needs managing. So in terms of dealing with a road traffic collision, there is so much that a crew of 3 can do, whether that's stabilising the vehicle, administering initial casualty care, managing the glass or the systems in place within vehicles these days. And I know Mark will be very aware of airbags and all the things that modern cons and technology that we're faced with. And even just closing the road and sending messages to backup and supporting ambulance colleagues is extremely valuable. So the one thing that we did act upon on the feedback, which I think is a similar issue, was to make sure that all of our on-call firefighters, even if they've only joined us very recently, have a better level of awareness around road traffic collision training. So we've implemented that right at the start when they join us. And then they'll go back and on-call firefighter and conclude all of their technical training around road traffic collision. And of course, the final thing that I'd probably like to mention is I mentioned the phrase tools for the job. So some of the feedback that we had from our workforce is we know that there's better cutting and rescue gear out there than the hydraulic stuff that's got hoses, which we've traditionally had. So we've invested in that and we've sped up the rollout of that to ensure that crews have battery-powered lighter gear, which means if they need to make cuts to take roofs off or create space, they can do so whilst crews are coming to assist them. So it's far better as a result of thinking along the lines that you mentioned.
Sorry, I was just also wondering about what action can I'm thinking around the automatic fire alarms activating. If they attend an automatic fire alarm and there is a fire, can they enter a building to rescue people and put out the fire?
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of the automatic fire alarms, I have to say, and I say this disappointingly, the vast majority of automatic fire alarm calls out turn out to be false alarms, whether they be good intent, system faults. And to be honest, we've just had a look at our latest performance figures and we've seen an uptick in the number of false alarms, particularly as a result of equipment, which prompts another concern. Are we talking about automatic protection systems? And actually, if we think about the amount of home visits that the fire service have done, and people as well have got more conscious quite rightly about fitting domestic smoke detectors, they are making up the vast majority now of our equipment faults because many of them have a lifespan of between 8 and 10 years. Fire service have been fitting them for 15, 20 years now, so many of them are bleeping. So the vast majority are false alarms. And the other thing that we take comfort from and assurance is our fire control procedures around this. So the level of call, challenge and scrutiny that goes on at receipt of an automatic fire alarm coming into fire control is really robust. If there's any inkling that there's a real fire, then a full predetermined attendance is mobilised. Other than that, it's just a single pump. So I'm very confident that actually a 3-person crew, even if they got information that something's changed and this is a developed fire, they would have ongoing support immediately initiated to allow them to do a different operation than we may envisage. Thank you. Thank you.
Just one more quick.
Go on, Councillor Rees, one more.
Very quickly. My mum came out of hospital the other day and I was pleased to see the person from the Home First team, one of the nurses, asked the olive branch questionnaire. But I was just curious to know, if a referral's made, how quickly do people get out? I'm thinking of the demands on the fire service.
Yeah, I would. So can I just clarify, when we talk about the olive branch, are you talking about the referral for the fire service to come out and do the alarms, or us in the fire service doing an olive branch referral, which may get support from social care or health based on risk to the individual. There's two ways. That's
right. Well, when I was looking at the questionnaire, I was kind of thinking, I assume that this goes to the fire service and the fire service come out and do some kind of low
home fire risk check. Yeah. Okay. Normally it's pretty quick. Normally days to a week, I would say. If it's longer than that, I'd contact Mark, and Mark, I'm sure, will try and expedite it. So we've got dedicated technicians as well as fire crews who can come out and do that sort of a service. So it's good to hear that it's still being utilised as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions for Glyn about the 3-person crewing? Councillor Wildens, I see your hand up. Yes, go ahead.
It's not really a question, Chair, it's more of a comment. Since the last meeting, where I think you're grilled quite severely, I visited, along with a few other councillors, the fire station. And anyone who knows me knows that my questions are fairly incisive and direct. What I would like to say is that when talking about whether it was 3-man crew, whether it was talking about equipment and who could use it and the state of it, we had an entire and thorough visit, looking at all the apparatus, talking to anybody we wanted to talk to, the ordinary firemen as well as the good sat here today. And I don't think in all my years, as either as a sort of project manager or a lawyer, I've ever met such a group of open and transparent people who gave very direct answers to very direct questions, and I would like to commend them for that. There was nothing hidden, nothing fudged, no grey areas. It was very direct, and I just think they should be commended for it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Councillor, and I would second that as well. We always appreciate when you make time for us councillors to come around and visit the station, and the firefighters give us their time. It's always very much appreciated in answering all of our many questions. Any more questions specifically on 3-person crewing?
Hates me. Can I just recommend that anybody who has the opportunity and are invited, that they go and visit the fire station themselves, and so they can have the same experience that we had.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you want to go back to you then and then hear about Newcastle Fire Station and an update on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. But I just want to acknowledge the kind comments from the committee, and we'll make sure that that's taken back to our firefighters, who are never backwards in coming forwards with us as well. So it's good to hear that they're so direct and open too. So I'll now hand over to my colleague, Mark. Thank you.
Cheers, Glenn. Evening, committee. Chair, thanks for the invite. My name's Mark Tatton, as Glenn said. I'm the station manager for Newcastle. I've been there just over 18 months. And I've worked for the fire service in Staffordshire. I'm in my 25th year, so thank you for inviting me. I just wanted to talk tonight about the station specifically. And this follows our community risk management plan, which has some synergy with the Commissioner's overall plan as well. So, and what I'd like you to understand, that just doesn't sit on a shelf at headquarters somewhere. That actually trickles down, and we are asked by Glenn and Rob to actually provide plans that mirror the actual overall service plan at station level and down to watch level as well. So it trickles all the way through. So it has some meaning. So I just wanted to assure the committee of that point, really. And starting with the safe and wells and prevention specifically, it's still a really important part of our role, is to make sure that our communities are safe. And part of that is the safe and well project work that we carry out on a daily basis. Newcastle completed 1,411 safe and well visits last year in 2024. So that's your communities which are being visited by our crews, and they are providing a service which not only provides them with a working smoke alarm, and we are still shocked now after nearly 20 years of fitting smoke alarms that we have households that are still not protected by a smoke alarm. So, whatever work you can do in your constituents is to assist us. Please, the message is the smoke alarms. Please, we will come and fit them. So please make sure that that your communities know that we can do that for them. But it isn't just about smoke alarms. as we've touched on there's referrals into partner agencies to make sure that those most vulnerable within the community are also getting the best from us as the people that we're responsible to as well. We can improve their home and living environments through identifying risks, through the simplest of things, removing trip hazards, like removing a rug or a carpet that prevents people from tripping over. Helping with this home escape plans, that's still something that we still do. So helping our community to understand how to get out of a house if they feel that they're trapped and they're at risk from smoke or fire. And more importantly as well, the safeguarding. So I know one of our colleagues on the committee is to do a safe. So that's a really, really important part of our role. And the training that we receive and the crews receive is really, really helpful in, again, helping those most vulnerable who require our help. So that's really important. The schools work that we carry out, that's moving on a pace really. So we refreshed our education offer to the communities of Staffordshire last year, and that hits all of the key stages throughout the school years. Up to yet, we've on the new programme, Newcastle we've carried out 32 visits. That's since the start of September. So each watch at Newcastle has a programme that they must complete over 2 years. So that's what we're working towards at this moment in time. The crews engage with all, as I've said, with all the key stages right the way through, and they also drag me in as well. So I go to the college down on opposite the fire station, and I will deliver the package to that key stage year. So it's really, really invaluable. It empowers the young people as well, our young people, and gives them some life choices, but also at a young age, it obviously gives them the education that's required to keep them safe. Moving on to the business, which I know is really important, an important part of the council's work. So our PORIS inspection programme, which is basically our internal auditing programme for all of the businesses which present a risk to us and the communities of Newcastle. So that's ongoing. Crews have targets that they have to complete, and it's basically going out and doing a safe and well on a business, basically. So we'll go out and score that premise on a risk rating, depending on what sort of hazard it presents to us when we get there. Alongside that, we also we've started to do at the start of the compliance checks. So I know we discussed around our legal duties of both ourselves as a fire service and the business communities as well. So those compliance checks are put in place to assist businesses to make sure that they are compliant with the law. So that, again, is in its very early stages, but that's a new project that we've implemented within Staffordshire. The trial is being run from Newcastle. So I think with some of the business, the effects that business and the fires can have on businesses, it can't be measured really with regards to the impact it can have when you start thinking about the impact on the environment and the local economy as well. So it's a really important part of what we're doing. Fire hydrants. So if anybody on wherever you live within the city, you will have a hydrant within a stone's throw of where you live. And it's really important that work that we do with making sure that hydrants are operational. It's important for you, obviously, and the community that we're serving to make sure that the water is there when we need it. It's also really important for firefighter safety. It's at front and centre of what we do on a day-to-day basis with regard making sure that our people are safe. So that's something that we also do. It's also a legal duty. So I just want to provide you some assurance that we are complying with the law and making sure that we're doing our due diligence with regards to that. A positive out of that, it's the crews' familiarisation and their training that they're carrying out. So it isn't just looking in a hole in the ground and making sure that water comes out. There's a definite benefit to the crews and the wider fire service to make sure that when we do come and we're needed, that we can operate and we can operate effectively. Moving on to protecting Staffordshire and its people. So I've touched a little bit about training, but training is, again, the cornerstone of the fire service. It's really important to me personally to make sure that the crews and the teams I'm responsible for are trained to the best that they can be. You will all know about accidents that have happened in the past where, unfortunately, firefighters have been injured or killed, and that's something that we don't want to happen in Staffordshire. So we're training for tall buildings. Glenn's already mentioned Grenfell. Those very high profile incidents have a massive impact on what we do day to day. And it's always in the form of training. So we are reactive to those sort of incidents, but we're also very proactive in our approach and making sure that we are trained to the best that we can be. This is by complete coincidence, but we've had 1,410 incidents at Newcastle, so it's one less incident that we've completed safe and well. So there's a nice little bit of serendipity there, but that it is coincidence. But it just shows how busy we are and we can be at Newcastle with regards to, and it's all incident types. I know we've also already discussed some, but RTCs we've got the M6 and the A34 and the A500, A50, main arterial routes through Newcastle and the city of Stoke-on-Trent. So we're a very busy station with regards to what we attend and the type of attendance we make. We've also got the water rescue unit. So again, this is an open invitation to the whole committee. I would suggest not all at once, but by all means, please come down and have a look at what we do. It's all right, no problem. But we've also got the water rescue station for Staffordshire as well. So we've got powered craft at the station, which in spate conditions through the winter when we've had flooding, we are responding daily to rescue people and animals from flood water. So it's a really important part of our job. Public confidence, we're working really hard to have your confidence. It's important to us that we are respected. It's important that the fire service has a standing within the community and we maintain that trust. So that's really important to us. And the work that we actually carry out, the training and the culture that we instill within our teams is really important as well. So we've had a really good HMI CFRS inspection, and the feedback was really, really positive about our culture. So that's something I think we should acknowledge and be really proud of about the people that we are working with. The support that we provide to the teams as well at the station with regards to the welfare and overall the welfare provision that we provide is really important as well. So we've got Hive and Say So, where if individuals aren't confident to actually speak up, then there's routes that they can go where they can do that confidentially. And that's really positive for us. It gives the opportunity for individuals who haven't got the confidence to speak up to actually raise some of the issues that they're actually experiencing, which is good. Finally, onto service reform, which I think is probably where you are more interested in the actual performance of the station. Obviously, Glenn's talked quite heavily on 3 rides, so I'm not going to repeat any of that. One of the responsibilities that I have is obviously on call or the retained service. It's not where I need it to be. It's not where the service needs to be, and it's most definitely not where the community of Newcastle wants it to be as well. So we're working really hard with that. So at the moment, the availability isn't where I want it to be. It's most definitely where Glenn doesn't want it to be either. So I'm under some severe pressure to make sure that is improving. And the promise I can make is that I am working towards that. It is skills dependent, and I'll explain that. So for us to turn out with the correct skills, as we've already discussed under the 3 riders, for an appliance to move, we need a driver, and I need a qualified officer in charge. And that's where I'm suffering with the skills at this moment in time. So we went through a couple of 3 years ago at Newcastle, we had a lot of people leave, and it takes up to 3 years to train a firefighter to become competent, and then to train them as a driver and an officer in charge as more additional training on top. So it is, there is a time element attached to that. It's something I can't turn on straight away. There's nowhere I can just go and get these individuals. I have to train those individuals. So that's something that we're working on. We've currently got 13 members of staff on Orange Watch, and we're oversubscribed. And I'm not sure how Glenn will like us, but I am recruiting more. So until I'm told to stop, but the way that the model works, the staffing model, and based on the current availability, I need more people. So I can assure you that we've got 3 people at the application stage who are looking to join us as we speak. So that's happening right now. On the other side, there's always a negative side, unfortunately. I've had 3 leavers in the last 14 months, which obviously has an impact. And some of those individuals have left hold those skills that we've been talking about. So that leaves me with, I've got 8 people in permanent development until they qualify. To what comes with that is a lot of work in developing those individuals and providing that support to make sure that they are competent and they can do the job for you and do your communities. So that is an overall sort of piece on the performance of the station. The last bit I just wanted to talk about, unless you've got any burning questions, I just want to talk about the Home from Hospital team that we set up in December of 2023. I don't know how aware the committee is about the Home from Hospital work that we're doing. So basically, we're working with the NHS locally at the hospital, and basically we've provided a team which is funded by the NHS. We've provided the people, and their role is to take people from the hospital who are ready to be put back to home, to return to home after a short stay or a long stay in a hospital. And basically we go and collect them. We're a friendly face. We carry out a safe and well. We make sure they get home safe. We make sure that they've got food in the fridge. We make sure the heating works. If the heating doesn't work, we make sure that it does before we leave them. Okay, so we'll make the necessary referrals into all the partner agencies that we need to speak to. So that settling service is a really important part of the job. We have a cup of tea and a chat if that's what they want. We make sure that we've got access to the bed. If the bed's upstairs and they can't get up the stairs, we will bring the bed down and we'll put the bed in an appropriate place so they can get some rest and respite. As I've said, safe and well is carried out. We'll do a security check on the premise as well to make sure that all the doors are locking properly and they're working. We'll fit a key safe to the outside while we're there. So the key safe, obviously, it's for a key. So friends, family, and partner agencies can gain access if they need to. So that's really important as well. The overall aim is to assist the hospital in making sure that there's beds and clearing beds. So since December 2023, we've had over 2,000 mobilisations where we've taken 2,000 people home from hospital, settled them in, and we were awarded, if you see on the screen there, so last month we were awarded, and this is the first time it's ever happened, by the way, from the hospital, the Chief Executive Award, and that was awarded to the team, which is really a really proud moment for them because they worked really, really hard. And I invite you all to come down and have a look and meet the team because they do a really, really worthwhile job. And that's my update. If you've got any questions, I'm ready to take them.
Thank you very much, Mark. Really comprehensive overview there. And I'm sure we've got a lot of questions here from councillors. I'll start with Councillor Brown, please. And Mark, if you just move the microphone just closely so we can hear your answers clearly for those watching online. Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, officers, for really interesting report. As a former head teacher, I can honestly say your educational visits are excellent, even working with the youngest children, the nursery children, about fire safety. It really is valuable, and I just want to say thank you for that. I've got a question that's not really related to that, though. I'm thinking about HMOs and the rise of HMOs across not just this borough, but across the country. Of all those incidents that you reported that you've been out to in Newcastle, would you have any data available? I'm not asking for it now, obviously, on what percentage of those relate to HMOs and whether the false alarm kind of incidents you mentioned anecdotally, whether they ever relate to HMOs. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. The short answer is yes. We really look in detail at all the mobilisations for trends, as you could imagine, and trying to reduce incidents occurring in the first place is the best way of protecting people. When it comes to houses of multiple occupation, there's a special interest because it crossovers with our enforcement and regulation activity from a protection point of view. So we look at all types of properties, the landlord side of things, what's happening and how we can work with them to try and make residents as safe as possible. So those could be shared in a different way, probably at a later date, I would suggest. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted to very quickly say, you reminded us there of how grateful we are to your response to that horrendous social disorder following the tragic Southport killings, and just wanted to say thank you. And I'm sure all the committee would echo that.
Sorry, Councillors, raise your hands again. There was quite a few. I'll go Councillor Diamond next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, gentlemen. That was absolutely really good. It's a lot to be learned from that. I've just got a couple of things. The safe and well, thank you. My mum took part in that and she loved the fact that you turned up very quickly to put her key safe outside. And when you're on about getting a call out to smoke alarms in houses, who do we contact? Because I mean, I'm from Kisco, so we've got Kisco Fire Station. Have you got an email or a contact that we can actually put people in touch with, please, to get it actioned? Thank you.
Mark will supply the information, not just for yourself, for the committee afterwards, if that's okay. We've got a dedicated contact centre team that can sort out all enquiries, and it goes back to the councillor's early point around referrals and things like that to make sure that we can get somebody out to do the safe and well visits. Thank you.
Councillor Wheeldon, did you have a question?
Yes. At the moment, I'll wait until they finish scribbling. Are you done? At the moment, there's a lot of building and new construction going on in our town centre, and it's going to be more and more. And there are going to be bigger buildings, but bigger spaces inside, different styles of accommodation. In those sorts of instances, do you, because it's quite different than just going to a house fire, it's a house and it's 3 stories, 2 stories, whatever, and you deal with it and it's pretty well standard layout. But with bigger spaces internally and variety of occupation, do you at pre-habiting stage make yourselves au fait with those new buildings that are going up? It will cut down risk, it will reduce lack of knowledge when you're going to a potential fire in those. Is that the sort of thing that you would do? I don't know.
Again, the answer short term is yes. There's kind of 2 aspects from the fire service where we're involved. One is around regulation. So being consultees to plans, building regulations, we process those. We offer our expert opinion on the building design at all stages. And I know you'll be aware, since the Grenfell Tower inquiry and the outcomes, things have tightened up massively around that, not just within tall buildings, you know, getting stricter. We are massive advocates of the use of sprinklers as well and the fitting of them at build stage. We do have some uphill battles in terms of the actual regulation and requirements over those, but Locally, we've invested and match funded in the fitting of sprinklers in the first instance, so we continue in that regard. But the important thing is as well, you'll get a local feel for understanding the risks. And I'll hand over to Mark now, because it ties in with what he was talking about, the crews at Newcastle spending time going out and visiting their risks. So if we can do that in the development stages, that obviously is advantageous, and we try to do that. So I'll let Mark just add the local perspective.
I mean, that's what I was thinking about, particularly sort of people filling the space, that's the phrase, preoccupation.
Yeah, just to back up what Glenn said, really. So training is makes up a massive part of the firefighter's day. One of my responsibilities is to make sure that the high risk venues or buildings are known about. So as an example, we've got number 1 London Road, which I'm sure you're all aware of. So when I came to Newcastle, I took responsibility for oversight of some of the work that was going on there. Not all of it, but it was just managing the communications for the fire service from the station's perspective. Our Protect departments have been heavily involved in identifying what the issues are. That is then disseminated to the crews. And what fell out of that was, from a practical perspective, we asked all of the crews in North Staffordshire to visit the premises and to familiarise themselves with the premises, the layout, where the hydrants are, where the exits are, where the lift shafts are. So with regards to providing assurance for you that we are on top of things, then the answer again is yes. A more recent example, although it's not a lived-in premise, are the car parks that are springing up. So we have, prior to when it was safe to attend, and they were prior to them being switched on, we arranged with the builders to go and actually visit the car parks and understand how they work, what the risks, the inherent risks are within that premise. So if we do have an incident there, we're effective when we get there. So it's really important, and the understanding the risks and the hazards of the premises that we actually cover within Newcastle is a really important part of our job. And moving on from that, it isn't just the ones that are occupied, it's the unoccupied premises as well. So those also present a significant risk to our crews as well. So that's some work that we also carry on and do as well.
Can I finish?
Go on, Councillor Wilden.
Thank you. There's very little you haven't thought of that I can ask you about. I'll just leave you with 2 things, if I may. One is, I think it's worth going into hospital to get the treatment that you provide coming out. I'm trying to think of something that's wrong with me at the moment. The second thing to do with your recruitment, if it's any help to you, I came across a little 5-year-old standing in the middle of a toadstool ring. You know, they're supposed to be magical. And he was there with his fingers crossed like this, saying, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a fireman. Might be worth taking back to the voice.
Thank you. Councillor Barker, did you have a question? No? Okay. Hands over if there are any more questions for... Okay, I'll go to the back first. Councillor Heason.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you for giving us a really comprehensive overview of what you do. That's probably things that we wouldn't think of, like the home from hospital, safe and well, all them kind of things, and also the update, because there have been concerns. Obviously, this committee asked you to come back about the 3 person teams, and certainly from my perspective, I think you've allayed any questions there or fears about what they're going to be going out to. So thank you.
Councillor Rees.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for that, Mark. Really, really helpful and informative. Just on the home from hospital scheme, years ago I was hospital social worker, so I was involved in getting people home from hospital. And obviously some of these issues are, you know, well, who's going to fit the key safe? Who's going to check the boiler? Oh my God, the bed needs going, you know, who's going to, you know, all these kind of things. And there's loads of other things really kind of impacted on getting people home in a timely manner. So has this kind of project you've been involved in, has that, do you know whether that's actually kind of improved has it reduced the delay in discharges, do you know?
We can say with confidence, yes, it's had a massive impact, and we've got that independently explored through Chester University. So we asked them, we commissioned them to come in and have a look at it. So they've got that academic strength and rigour behind this, because I think the work that's going on here at Newcastle around this is fantastic, and I think it's one of its kind in the country. And our ambition now is to see that scale and develop across not just Staffordshire, across the UK fire and rescue service sector in partnership with health systems. So that's why we needed the academic rigour, but it's exceptionally compelling. Thank you.
Any more questions from councillors? I'd just like to add, I echo those what you said about the home from hospital scheme. It sounds like it's something that it's a great example of joined up services, which is exactly what we need, knowing that the pressures are under the NHS and care service are under. So I'd really commend everyone involved in that. And I hope that other fire services also take note of the great results it's already having. I'd also just like to mention that the open day you did last year seemed to go very well, because I know someone who's got a teenage daughter who went along and they came out saying, I really want to be a firefighter now. What do I have to do to become a firefighter? So just that opening up to the community and building those relationships with them and inspiring people seems to really work well. So I hope you run another similar event in the future. I'm sure you have plans to. Yeah, definitely. And again, just very grateful for the kind comments that yourself and the whole committee have shared with us tonight. Thank you. But there's no more comments or questions from councillors. Well, thank you both for your time, and thank you very much for coming in. I'm sure you might be hearing from us again soon to come and visit yourselves. Yes. Okay, still got plenty of items on the agenda, so we move straight on to item 5, which is the District and Borough Health and Scrutiny Activity report from Staffordshire County Council's Healthcare and Overview Committee, which is on pages 17 to 22. Any comments on this, or are we happy to accept that report? Yes, Councillor Brown.
I just wanted to say how useful I found the summaries that sort of detailed what other district councils were doing across Staffordshire. I thought it was excellent. And I was particularly interested in what Stafford Borough Council have been doing. They've conducted a health inequalities project. I'm wondering whether we could consider that in Newcastle, whether it could be something that we could add to our work programme. So I just wanted to raise that, because I think when we assess how effective we are as a council, we often don't look at how effective we are with our most vulnerable residents, and whether it's something that we could look into, as Stafford have done.
Okay, yep, thank you for the comments, Councillor Brown. We'll note that. Apart from that, we happy to accept the report. Thank you, councillors. We'll go on to agenda item 6, which is Wally's Quarry odour issues on page 23 to 48. So Nest will be introducing this report for us.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. So this update report is in a similar format to what you've seen before. It's the report that went to Cabinet in February. However, I do have some updates for the intervening period for you tonight. So in terms of the data in the report, it provides an update in the last 3 months, so from November to January, focusing in terms of the particular data in relation to January. So in terms of January, odour complaints increased further from what we'd seen in December, and we had a total of 1,633 complaints, which was the highest that we had received for a considerable period of time. And it was higher than those reported every January since the start of this incident in 2020. And the complaint numbers in this figure had not been recorded in Newcastle since July 2021. So it was somewhat of a peak in terms of that month. You'll be familiar in terms of the reports that we count the number of days where we have over 10 complaints received. And in January, we had 24 of those, which we consider to be odour events, where over 10 complaints were received in that day. However, that is a very dismal picture in terms of that. I can update that in terms of February's figures, they're much improved. So in February, we had a total of 79 complaints received in total, and only one day where we received over 10 complaints. So it was much improved from one extreme to the other. In relation to air quality data, one of the things that we report on is the percentage exceedance of the WHO annoyance level, and that's reported in section 2.16 of the report, and that shows the hydrogen sulfide levels fluctuate, but did show significantly increased levels in January. There was an overall peak being shown on the week between the 6th and the 12th of January with between 37% and 56% exceedance of that WHO annoyance level across the MMFs. In terms of the appendices, the KPI data that's included in Appendix 3 showed that the 5-minute peak levels of that hydrogen sulfide concentrations was measured across all 3 MMFs at a peak on Christmas Day. And that was a range from between 585 micrograms per cubic metre to 1,347 micrograms per cubic metre, which was unfortunately on a day of very significance for the community. Complaints continue to correlate throughout that period really well to the air quality data and the percentage exceedance of the WHO level. And the graph that's shown in the report in terms of section 2.17 shows really good correlation between those two figures. People complain where the air quality is bad, when the hydrogen sulfide levels are bad, and that's something that's been quite consistent throughout the whole of this incident. Because those levels were so high in January, the UK HSA that considers the health impact did carry out an interim health risk assessment because of those levels. That assessment concluded that while the risk to long-term health is still likely to be small, there is an increased likelihood that some residents could experience short-term health impacts affecting breathing, irritation of the eyes, nose and mouth. These effects should be transient and reduce as exposure declines. However, these higher exposure levels may exacerbate pre-existing chronic lung conditions. And that was something that was done as an addition because of the peaks that we were seeing in terms of the incidence. Likewise, I can say that in February there has equally been that downturn. So if we look at the same metrics for the percentage exceedance of the WHO annoyance levels, in February, the week from the 10th to the 16th of February, that actually showed a 0 reading at all of the MMFs. In relation to EA updates, there's been a lot that's gone on, but in terms of the report, section 2.19 to 20 provides the updates through compliance assessments report. So that's the EA's visits to the sites where they show non-compliance. And they had actually awarded a number of CCS scores on those CAR forms, and there were 39 points relating to the site issued during that period. And those failures related to management systems, operational procedures, and also engineering works. So in terms of the action, obviously, I think we'd reported at the previous one that the EA had served the closure notice. So during this period, there was an application made by Wally's Quarry for the interim relief to stay the effect of the closure notice, pending the determination of the statutory appeal by the Planning Inspectorate. It was heard at the Royal Courts of the Planning Court on the 30th of January 2025. The judgment was that Wally's Quarry Limited interim relief and their judicial review applications were refused, which has meant that they haven't been able to restart the importation of waste throughout that period. Obviously, since this, there has been further judgments or further events that have happened in terms of late last week, Wally's Quarry entered liquidation. The EA in their statement confirmed that they will engage with the liquidators about their intentions for the site, and the EA have also confirmed that they will continue to work with partner organisations and carry out air quality monitoring and using the mobile monitoring facilities. As members can appreciate, the liquidation of the company does ultimately remove Wally's Quarry Limited from the operation of the landfill site. This is a fast-paced and evolving situation, and I can update on some information in that regard. The EA will update their Engagement HQ website when they have further news to share with the community. At Newcastle, we will offer both the EA and the liquidator any support we can within our powers to keep this landfill under control as it is currently. The work on capping and gas infrastructure required by the Environment Agency through the first stages of the closure notice has largely been carried out. And we will continue to monitor the data in relation to the landfill, and we'll continue to undertake odour monitoring and assessments in the community. In respect of the current situation, the timing of the liquidation in this meeting are not ideal, as you will appreciate. There will no doubt be many questions from yourselves in the community relating to the short and long-term situation and the future of the site. As this is so recent, I'm unlikely to be able to provide detailed answers to many of your questions this evening. However, we will continue to work with our partner organisations and provide updates as we can through our website, future Cabinet reports and also Scrutiny reports. So thank you.
Thank you, Nesta. Any questions or comments from councillors? Councillor Wilden.
I think one of the things that concerns me is that in media and also in other documents, I often see it referred to as noxious odour. The odour is just evidence of the toxic gases, and it's one that's noticeable. And even those who are reporting the problem tend to report it, the smell is back again. It's more than the smell. It's been reported on the news, on the television in Midlands today, and they always refer to odour and smell. That is just the flag that's waved. That is not the problem. It's bad enough that it's a smell, but it's the actual gas that is causing the smell, that is causing the problem. And I have serious concerns about it consistently being referred to as foul odours. I would much prefer it if it was, you know, foul odours, noxious odours and toxic gases, because otherwise it becomes a misnomer and it can reduce or deflect from what's actually going on. Oh, it's just a bad stink. And that's how the population of the country see it when it's reported in the media or it's reported in documents that we might prepare and use. That's one thing. Can I say a second thing? Is you referred to some effect on. I think you referred to someone had already got the effect was flawed because they already had a lung problem. There's a principle in English law of you take your victim as you find them. So you cannot say, oh, well, you know, they couldn't breathe anyway. It's the impact on the victim as you find them that is the serious thing. You can't reduce the harm that's being suffered by saying they already had a problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. In relation to the comments, the reason why we use odour is because our legislation is principally enshrined within the Environmental Protection Act, and that refers to it as odour. Obviously, there is a source to that odour. It's a component of a number of different gases. You know, we measure hydrogen sulfide because that is one of the elements that's easily measurable and has standards that go with it. There's obviously a mix of them. Landfill gas is a mixture of all sorts of components in relation to them. So I do understand it is wider, and we do focus in terms of some of those measurements in terms of the hydrogen sulfide, because that's the ones that are capable of being measured and assessed against legal standards. So that's why some of those are there. So I do understand that it is landfill gas creating those things, but we do refer to it as odour because that is how our legal basis is termed. But I appreciate what you say in relation to that, and we'll take that forward. I think in relation to the health advice, obviously that is a snippet of the whole document that the UK HSA give in relation to that. It does go on to say that if anybody is suffering those, with health symptoms, that they do need to contact their GP or the NHS in relation to those. And I think it's just saying that in relation to those people may well find the effects of the odour during that time period where it was particularly high. They will feel some of those effects slightly more, and it then goes on to encourage them to contact the NHS or the GP in relation to that.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. You won't be surprised as Silverdale councillor that I've got a few questions about this. For a long time on the Dale, people have been worried about this cutting and running, and the news that the company had gone into liquidation was not really a surprise for people on the Dale. I'm interested in the table 2.26, which details a list of actions with dates. And Nesta, would you be so kind as to say as whether these actions have kept a pace, and whether, if they have or haven't, whether that had an effect on the drop in reports in February? Thank you.
Yeah, that's it. I think, as I said, in terms of updates, what the position that we're aware of, that the capping and gas infrastructure works that were required by those early stages had principally been completed in relation to those. So if you actually see the landfill site now, the area where there was the open working phase has got the membrane over that. So substantially complete, I think, is where we would go in terms of those. So in terms of the first stage, they have stopped accepting the waste. In terms of the step 2, the bench-like horizontal platform is very visible on there. So you can see now that the working phase goes down. There's a level horizontal platform that has had a bench-like feature, and then it continues down. So that's something that has been completed there. Step 3 is the capping area of there that has been done, and going on to step 4, they have, I understand, completed those. So up until the point, I understand that they have substantially been keeping to plan with that. I think there have been some delays, some of the weather. You have to appreciate, and I think we've spoken about this before. My understanding is, in terms of laying some of that membrane, sometimes we do have to have some of those weather conditions and things. So I think we'd say it's substantially complete. I think with the gas infrastructure going in, and the substantial completion of that capping, that has resulted in some improvements. And I would say this weekend has been quite a good example of that. Obviously, time will be the telling of it. But this weekend, we had weather conditions which were cold, were frosty, were the typical conditions where there would be a peak in complaints. Now, we did receive slightly more complaints, but they were all under 10 for those times. So, I'm quite positively reassured by those. I think what we can say is long may it continue. And I think time will say how they have done, but they've certainly made an impact. When the capping work was completed, there's a significant change between January and February in terms of the data.
Just one very quick follow-up. So if you're saying, Nesta, if I'm reading you correctly, that up to step 4, we've had consistent progress, but when the decision was made that they couldn't accept any more waste while they appealed the closure notice, if you look at those dates, there's nothing really, you can almost see a correlation that things stopped around January, can't you? That they're not on schedule, if you like, in the January, whereas they were in the December.
I would go further and say, as far as I'm aware, progress have been made in terms of step 5, so the gas extraction connections have been made. Step 6, the geomembrane capping, they have done those. I understand they have done some surveys. I haven't seen those. So I think up until, the dates that we have, they have been making progress in relation to those. So as far as I'm aware, and it would have to be something, you know, from the EA, but I can ask in terms of the individual steps and come back to you. But they have been working through those steps up until obviously
Friday.
the news of last week.
Yeah.
But maybe I can confirm for you more in terms of every single one, because it isn't information that is submitted to us directly.
Oh, thank you for that. I really appreciate it, because that detail I think is interesting, and if we are going to hold them to account, it's that kind of detail that we're going to need. Thank you.
Councillor Northcott.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Nesta, for this report. I just want to drill down on a little bit of information. Would you say it was fair to assume that the downturn in figures in February was more due to the milder conditions? You reported that we'd had a recent cold spell and there was only 10 major reports, but I would say that the January temperature had mean average temperatures far lower for far longer that affected the actual flow of air that went to ground level, and hence probably more reports and complaints. And I'd say that probably it was reasonable to suggest that February was more to do with the milder conditions rather than any vast improvements.
It's very hard to make that direct correlation, isn't it? And I think that's why I say time will tell in relation to them. I think through the whole of this incident, we do know there's correlation between certain weather conditions and, you know, the incidence of the community being affected by the odours or the gases there. The main one that we look at is obviously the temperature differential, but it's actually the low wind speed. So, you know, that is the primary one when I'm looking to say, when do I go out and monitor? That's the key thing that we look for in relation to that. And I think in February, although it was cold, it has been very windy. So that will have helped in terms of dispersion. But what we have had this weekend is those cold conditions and relatively still winds. So, you know, early indications would show that, you know, the works have progressed through January. So ultimately, some of those capping had gone in, the gas infrastructure had gone in, it had been collected. They'd had increased gas collection from those. So that working area where it was open to the elements had been closed, and they've been capturing that, along with, you know, some of the weather conditions. Hopefully, it's all steps in the right direction. Time will tell. You know, it's very hard to say, you know, that is ultimately it, you know, but, you know, that has been the aim, hasn't it, to contain, capture and destroy the whole way through. And actually, hopefully they have containment now, so they can capture the gas, and it is being destroyed through the gas utilisation plant. Early days, time will tell, but certainly this weekend, you know, would have been the conditions that we've been looking out for to say we're going to monitor. I was actually out Sunday, I was out early this morning, I was out Thursday, and equally, you know, in terms of what I was measuring either with my Jeromes or in terms of my personal assessments, far less than I have experienced in the previous months.
Thank you. Thanks.
Councillor Wheeldon.
Just a query really, Nesta. There is, and I don't know whether it's yours or someone else's, I've seen drone footage available, and stage 7 refers to collect and remove surface water. What I've seen on the drone footage is that there's a significant amount of water. It isn't just surface, it has some depth to it. And on the drone footage, which is a video, you can see something bubbling up, which has to be some sort of gas, whether it's noxious or standard or non-toxic, I don't know. But it's certainly causing some serious concerns for the residents who live nearby as well, that it's still happening. And if that's coming to the surface there, A, how's it got there? And B, is anyone testing that? Where there's bubbles, there's a gas coming off it. So we're still sort of a little in the dark as to how bad that is, or whether it's just something that happens. I don't think we know enough about these dreadful waste sites to be able to evaluate at what stage we are yet. So I just wondered if anyone was evaluating this bubbling stuff that's coming up through the surface water.
In relation to drone footage, it's not something that we at the Borough Council undertake. So I do know it's not ours. In terms of that footage, I am aware and I have seen that. So that is work that the Environment Agency would do on site. Very much in terms of our involvement and the assessment in terms of nuisance and any action that we take, we're very much focused in terms of the off-site impact on the residents within the area. So that's where we tend to differentiate between what we do between the two parties. So, but I will ask the EA for an update in relation to what the current situation of that is for you.
Thank you. Does the EA provide access for us to, if they've taken any drone footage or testing, do they provide a copy for us as the Borough Council having to deal with the situation?
In relation to their updates, obviously they're all provided, and in terms of the EA engagement site, we would usually see those things coming through the compliance assessment reports. So you would see that an officer had undertaken a visit on a particular day, they'd undertaken particular assessments, this is what they'd found, and these were the works that were required. Obviously, there will be a period of time where those would have happened, and since Wally's quarry have departed, then obviously, those will change. So I think, in terms of those regular updates, that will be something that we'd have to see how we can provide, but I'll try and see what I can find in terms of the current situation for you.
Thank you, Nesta. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from councillors? I'll just say, Nesta, I mean, so much has happened since the last time we met. I mean, there's so many questions we could ask, but I imagine we won't, but there's so fast moving situation right now, we won't possibly get the answers right now. But I don't know if you can answer this one, which is about the, in 2.26, which is about the sort of the plan for the closure notice plan. The EA is referring a lot to methane and about the parts per million of methane when, we all know it's hydrogen sulfide, which has been the gas that's causing the issue, which is a toxic gas. I know they're monitoring it through the monitoring stations, but do you know why the EA are choosing to set the targets based on methane rather than to do with hydrogen sulfide?
So any gas that's emitted through a landfill gas is a combination of all those things. So you will have principally methane that comes out. A component of that will be hydrogen sulfide and plus the other gases. My understanding in terms of why methane is used is because in terms of some of the limit values that are set through the guidance, they are referred to as methane. So the methane will be the carrier, which contains other things as well. And there's quite strong correlations between the levels of hydrogen sulfide and the level of methane. But in terms of typical landfill sites and assessments, so the standards that are used for capping would put a limit value in terms of methane emissions. So that is why methane is used as opposed to hydrogen sulfide on this one. But if you contain the methane, you also contain the hydrogen sulfide.
Okay, thank you. And as we've seen, like you said, it was probably only 6 weeks or so ago, we were seeing like the worst data we'd ever seen in terms of the gases and the hydrogen sulfide. And now, we recently saw the 0% on all monitoring stations, which I hadn't seen, I think, ever, which is obviously a good sign. But as other councillors have mentioned, it's too early to say whether that's, a result purely of the works that have been done and whether it's weather conditions and so on. We'll have to wait and see on that one. I know we've got the sort of temporary geomembrane capping on the site now. When that's further works are completed and that turns into more permanent capping, would you anticipate there being possibly a resurgence in odours as that work's carried out, or would we expect the odours to remain at a low level as they are now?
I think in terms of the future works, what we have is what is detailed within that closure notice at this moment in time. I think part of that in the latter stages of those was the future restoration of that. So I think it's most probably too early for me to say in terms of what those would look like, where they will be at this moment in time. I think that's the bit that is most probably too close to where we are at this moment in time. But as soon as we can provide some updates, then we can do in relation to that. And I think in relation to those figures, like you say, time will tell. Hopefully it is a step in the right direction. What I've said is that we are committed to continue to assess the MMF data, to do the assessments that we do, keep looking for the times where we now know there will be typically higher odour incidents and try and monitor and assess at those times. You know, we're still wanting people to report occasions whereby, you know, they have complaints. As I said, you know, those have always provided really good correlation. You know, people complain when there's a problem. When there's no problem, they don't complain. And that's really, you know, that's credit to the community in relation to that. And that's really good information. So we'll continue to assess those so that we can say, actually, the works have resulted in this. And I think time will tell.
Thank you, Nesta. And I think, as Councillor Wilden referred to earlier, the TV show on Netflix, Toxic Town, is definitely worth a watch if you haven't seen it already. It's a very similar situation, some very worrying precedents. Councillor Wilkes.
Might sound a stupid question, but seeing if there's water on the site, has the water quality been checked? Because there is a good stream that runs underneath around Silverdale. And if it is being checked, how often?
I can tell you that it is checked, that the Environment Agency do undertake periodic checking of that. How often it is, I'm afraid I don't know that level of detail. I can seek to try and find out. Obviously, the permit required that Wally's undertake certain monitoring of that, but then I know the EA did validation checks as well. I can try and find out. I'm afraid I don't know the level of detail for that.
Councillor Wilden.
Oh, at the risk of driving everybody crazy. One more comment. You refer, Nesta, sort of to Wally's Quarry checking things and doing things according to their permit. I don't trust that they're doing what they say they're doing, or did. You refer to the EA doing this, that and the other. They've got a very, very poor track record. I'm just very grateful that you and your officers are actually checking up on this to make sure that at least you know what's going on now, because there's been probably an over-reliance in the past on them doing what they should do because they're supposed to be professional people. And we've now realised that they didn't always do what they could have done or should have done. So I'm grateful for what you're doing. But my goodness, I think we need to watch them like hawks, even though it's sort of partly over. Because again, the Environment Agency are monitoring themselves unless you're there watching them brandishing a big stick saying don't step out of line. But thank you for your work.
Thank you very much. You know, certainly in relation to the areas that we have responsibility, we will do that. For example, like the water quality, that is above and beyond our remit. But, you know, we do engage with the Environment Agency to, you know, try and provide that reassurance.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Councillors, we have to accept that report on Wally's Quarry. Thank you very much, and thank you, Nesta. We'll go on to our next item, which will be a verbal report on the Parks Short Life Working Group update, or also known as the Task and Finish Group about parks. Who's giving the verbal update? Councillor Wilden.
Yeah, I think I was coerced into this. Yes, I think the chair said you will give a verbal update. The Task and Finish Group has met once. It was almost like, if you like, a pre-meeting meeting where the parties involved were gathered together with the officers who knew a lot more than we did about geographical sites, the extent of the sites and what was actually being done to date. So it was very much an information gathering exercise. Because of circumstances that occurred on the particular day, it wasn't considered appropriate at that time, with being a fact-finding exercise, to actually appoint a chair to actually deliver the committee that was the task group. And that's, I understand, going to be the first thing on the agenda at the next meeting, what's happening in the meantime, as well as absorbing and reflecting on the information that was given by the officers, who were incredibly knowledgeable and well prepared, is that the individuals who all came to it from completely different strengths and perspectives and ideologies, which made it quite a strong task group, I think, are sending their queries and can I know more about this? Can I know more about that? What about this? What about that? And it's like a shopping list, if you like, for the officers to report back on. So if you like, the primary pre-meeting is taking place. And from now on, I think the next meeting is scheduled for the 25th, Chair. Is that right? 24th.
Yeah, 24th.
24th. Thank you, Councillor. Whereby we will all sort of be able to hit the tarmac running and to get on with the meat of the matter.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Wilden. We will hear more about that in due course when the task and finish group has had chance to meet again on the 24th, as was stated. If Councillor is happy to move on, we'll go on to item 8 on the agenda, which is Newcastle Town Centre Community Safety Partnership, which is on pages 49 to 56 of your agenda. I'll hand over to the officers for the report.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this report is to provide the committee with an overview of the work that's been delivered by the Community Safety Partnership, specifically in relation to Newcastle Town Centre. And this directly relates to the Community Safety Strategic Assessment and the priorities for 24-25. And it'll also make reference to the Civic Pride Initiative, which I'm sure members are all aware of. So the Council, Staffordshire Police and other agencies work collaboratively under the umbrella of the Community Safety Partnership. And the remit of the partnership is to identify and address community safety related issues across the whole of the borough and to deliver initiatives which promote civic pride and engage communities in striving towards a clean, safe and welcoming borough. It's not unknown, like many other towns and cities across the UK, Newcastle Town Centre experiences issues in relation to crime and antisocial behaviour, which can have a negative impact on the community perceptions on the town. But to address this, a number of initiatives are in progress, which are being jointly planned and delivered by the Council and the Police and the Community Safety Partnership. This report focuses on the initiatives which are in place or planned to tackle community safety and antisocial behaviour. And there are other initiatives in the progress to tackle with other related elements such as serious crime, homelessness and vulnerability, which are not covered in this report. If I take the committee down to section 3. This specifically relates to some statistics provided by Staffordshire Police, and this data is as of February 2025, and it illustrates data for Newcastle Town Centre showing a trend of reducing incidences across all types of offences in comparison to 23-24. You will be able to note from there that there has been an increase in theft of motor vehicle, and this is something that's been targeted by the neighbourhood policing team directly. The incidents in regards to crime and antisocial behaviour are managed through a daily police briefing where all crimes are reviewed. There's further scrutiny on all crimes through a threat and grip meeting where crimes are reviewed and allocated and named officers are then considered. There's also weekly performance reviews where crime levels and scrutiny of officers' work is actually reviewed, and problem profiles raised for hotspot locations. And the Community Safety Partnership focuses is in line with the priority areas, and that's all been agreed via data collected and produced in the Power BI. 3.2, we move down, it shows that there's an 8.2 reduction in antisocial behaviour reported incidents in the town centre in the last 12 months. And 3.21 and 3.22 shows a bit more of an analysis around that. You can see some peaks around July 2023 particularly. We can attribute that usually to around the summer holidays, where we tend to see a seasonal spike in line with that. Making members aware that there are dedicated patrols to the town centre on hotspot periods, and that's specifically between 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock where issues have been experienced. So if I take members down to section 4 of the report, This section particularly focuses on the number of different initiatives that the Community Safety Partnership works collaboratively on in terms of the town centre. And I'll just quickly take members through some of these areas of work, and then obviously we can take any questions if more information is required. So the first one is specifically in relation to the Public Space Protection Order. So the town centre has a dedicated order that has a suite of prohibitions to target problematic behaviour in and around the town centre. Non-compliance with the PSPO, as it's referred to, results in a fixed penalty notice. All neighbourhood policing teams and all the shifts across the neighbourhood policing team for Newcastle have been trained and are able to enforce against the PSPO, and this is actively used on a daily basis. Safer Nights is a police-led operation, and this specifically relates to the nighttime economy, but this runs on Friday and Saturday evenings. It has a dedicated team who is specifically based in the town centre to deal with the knock-on effects of the nighttime economy. The Safe Space, so this was launched back in March 2022. It was initially funded through the PFCC, and it's open on the iMarket. It runs on a Friday evening from 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the morning. It is run by volunteers, so if anybody does have a spare time on a Friday evening and would like to volunteer, little plug there, then we are looking for volunteers. The Street Medics, so this was an initiative that was funded as part of Safer Streets Round 4. It was funded through the PFCC's office, and it is currently in place until the end of this month. The project deploys street medics in the town centre, linking in with the nighttime economy, and specifically looks at helping to reduce the demand that we put on A&E services as part of the nighttime economy. CCTV, we've got a comprehensive CCTV network in and around the town centre, including all the subways as well. This is monitored locally in Stoke, and this is an operation that's undertaken by Stoke-on-Trent City Council, who monitor the CCTV network 24/7. I know that a number of members have been down to the CCTV monitoring suite to be able to see how that works in principle. And again, similarly to the fire station, if members are interested in being able to see that, then visits can be arranged directly. So please get in touch with me and I can make those connections. Precision policing. So this is an analytical report created by Staffordshire Police, which helps to understand vulnerability and crime. Now, Newcastle Town Centre is the Newcastle Precision Policing dedicated area, and that's not a surprise. Across the whole of the county, the precision policing areas for Staffordshire Police tend to be the town centres in each of the respective boroughs. And that is just in relation to the number of incidents in that area, the size of the area, and the number of people visiting those areas. What that does mean is that the police dedicate particular teams to patrolling those areas, and some of you may or not have heard about the community warden scheme that has been funded through the Police and Fire and Crime Commissioner, and they specifically target some of that precision policing to have a high visibility in those areas. We have the Joint Operations Group, which meets bi-monthly and is chaired by a portfolio holder. And that helps to review intelligence and target multi-agency interventions. And there's a small pot of funding within that operational group that helps us to align to any current trends that are sort of appearing at that time. I mentioned the community wardens, but then it just goes on to a number of different meetings just that for members to be aware of. So we have a partnership drop-in in the town centre on a monthly basis, and that's to help hopefully encourage businesses to come forward to discuss with key partners any issues in the town centre, anything they want to know about, any initiatives they want to be involved in, and really hope to open those lines of communication with the business community. And then we touch on the weekly enforcement meeting and the problem solving meeting. So these are partnership meetings that work collaboratively on a regular basis to help to generate different initiatives in terms of tackling some of our most problematic individuals or problem individuals specifically. Further down, it makes reference to the Civic Pride in Newcastle. So this is a joint initiative between the police, the Borough Council, Aspire, Fire and Rescue Service and the County Council, as well as other partners. And that's really about providing a visible presence in the communities and to reassure and assist residents and businesses. We had a week of action in the Newcastle Town Centre during October half term. Under the banner of Civic Pride in Newcastle, and that was really well received within the town centre. The Civic Pride initiative is rolling out across the whole of the Newcastle area now. We have our next event in the Cheston Holditch, Reg Street and Crackley area on the 17th and 18th of this month. Further down, just making reference to some further operations, joint operations with trading standards and immigration. We try to work really closely with other partner agencies to address concerns around vape premises. We'd had a really successful operation early in 2024 where a number of vape premises were visited and quite a considerable amount of stock was seized as being non-compliant under the trading standards banner. So this report, again, is just to give a bit of an overview of all the work that the Community Safety Partnership is undertaking. It does specifically relate to Newcastle Town Centre, but I'm happy to take any questions from members on any of the matters that have been discussed.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Michelle. It's great to hear about everything that's happening and the contribution of volunteers. I want to ask about the crime and policing bill that's currently going through Parliament. And the aim of that is to increase enforcement, really, giving stronger powers. I was particularly interested that the Home Secretary had visited Staffordshire and found out about some of the initiatives with the antisocial behaviour with off-road bikes, which is something that has plagued Rupert and I's lives in Silverdale. So I was also interested to read that the £200 limit on prosecutions for shoplifting was going to be lifted. So I'd like... Oh, sorry, I thought somebody spoke behind me. So I'd like officers to say whether they think this is going to be helpful as a bill and how we can really be making sure that people know about it and make sure that, you know, this increase in enforcement is to the fore. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. I think when it comes to enforcement powers, we'll never say that we'll turn them away because any enforcement is always a useful tool. And it's not a one-size-fits-all scenario when it comes to enforcement. In regards to shoplifting specifically, you know, we do have an issue in Newcastle Town Centre. We are doing a lot of engagement with businesses who choose not to report shoplifting offences, and that's a real difficult scenario and challenge to deal with that. We're having meetings on a regular basis with head offices for some of quite large establishments who are being impacted quite considerably on a daily basis. So there's some challenges there, but what I will say is at the moment we are having a very successful trend of applying for criminal behaviour orders on the back of shoplifting offences. It's been well received by the courts. It's something that's been rolled out in the city as well. And as a knock-on effect, obviously, as soon as we see a trend of criminal behaviour orders being applied for and being successful, we hope to see that impact having a downturn trend in shoplifting itself.
That's really good to hear. And just like to say that in my work with the PCSOs in my area, it's often enforcement is the issue. Things are reported to me and there's such a limit in terms of enforcement for the officers. So to hear that, and as a cooperative councillor as well, I know that the co-op has been very badly affected by shoplifting and the antisocial behaviour that goes along with it. So it's really good to hear you having some success.
Councillor Rees.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for taking us through that. I've just got a few questions. Just on the statistics, it's really great to see ASB as, you know, the reduction there. Just on serious violence, which has kind of remained the same. Do we have a definition of what the serious violence is and where those kind of incidents have kind of taken place in premises, homes within the town centre or outside?
So I don't have the definition to hand, but serious violence encompasses a whole host of different offences. So it's violence against a person, violence with a weapon. We also encompasses domestic abuse, which is also serious violence. We do have data in relation to problem premises within Newcastle Town Centre, and we work collectively with those establishments to ensure that any trends that we are seeing are dealt with. An initiative that we rolled out previous to this report is the introduction of knife wands for all door staff in Newcastle Town Centre. And that's not to say that we have a serious problem with people carrying weapons in the town centre as part of the nighttime economy. It's more of a deterrent measure and an opportunity for door staff to show compliance, to have compliance checks on the door. So hoping that helps.
Yeah. Do you think we, at some points, we could perhaps see some of that data? I think it'd be interesting just to see some of those trends.
Yeah, we work really closely. So as part of the Safer Nights initiative, we work and we get iron track testing in all the licensed premises as well, which specifically relates to drug taking. So all of that sort of data is collated and provided back to the businesses themselves for them to take proactive measures. And just something else to mention, linking in with that, is for the first week of April, as part of an intensification against violence against women and girls week, we will be rolling out as the Borough Council some spiking awareness training. So that's been sent out to all licensed premises across the whole of Newcastle. It's been hosted in the Safe Space in Newcastle Town Centre, and that's an opportunity for all licensed premises to participate in the spiking awareness and get a better understanding of the impact that such an activity has. And again, that relates back to the Crime and Policing Bill, which obviously specifically makes reference to making spiking an offence in its own right.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. Thanks for that. Just a couple of other questions. 3.3, do we know how many of those CPNs that have been issued to individuals, how many have kind of failed to comply?
We have a really good compliance rate when it comes to community protection notices. We have a small number of breaches going through the court process at the moment, and we're really keen to ensure that the escalation of failing to comply with them notices is done swiftly and promptly, whether that be escalation to injunctions or whether that be escalation through the criminal behaviour orders that I've already made reference to. I have got more specific data that I can provide if required.
Okay, thank you. And just on number 4, street medics, funding until the end of March. What's the data telling us regarding the reduction in demand on A&E services?
The data for the street medics is actually really overwhelming. And when I actually retrieved a lot of the data from the street medic reports, it was quite shocking to see the variation of incidences that have been dealt with by the street medics. And again, something that can be shared with the committee if that is of interest. One thing I will say is it's so welcome by the police, by the licensed premises themselves, and it also has obviously a huge impact in terms of us not having to call on ambulances unless absolutely necessary. You know, that immediate triage that the street medics are able to provide for quite low level injuries, whether it be twist of ankle, glass related injuries, and like if they fell over, is quite remarkable. So much so that we are looking to continue that project for the next 12 months and rolling that out on a more regular basis.
Fantastic. That's really good to hear. Yeah, thank you for that.
Any more councillors? Councillor Wildon.
Just a comment, really. I'm glad that the criminal orders are being attached to shoplifting. It's rife. The very nice jewellers that we have in the town centre has to employ the equivalent of a very muscly little bouncer outside with the doors, 2 double doors locked. It's almost like an airlock, which shows they feel vulnerable as a high class retailer. And the ladies who I'm terribly au fait with, because I'm getting sort of, a bit long in the tooth, and I'm actually 105 years old. The poor ladies in Holland and Barrett, whilst they love their new premises, and they've recently moved from opposite the roebuck to the new premises, they absolutely love them. You know, there's more room for products and everything. On a number of occasions, they've been sort of ram-raided by person, as it were, in that they've rushed in with holdalls, scooped stuff off the shelves. They haven't even run out the door, they've walked out, and there's nothing they can do. So I think there has to be a higher deterrent to shoplifting. We see programs on the television all the time where people are saying the police are just letting shoplifters go because there's no room in the prisons, and they're just getting sort of community service orders which they don't comply with, and nobody focuses on it or sort of leases it, if you like. So to attach criminal orders to shoplifting for us as a small market town, I think would work really well, and I'm really pleased about that.
Yeah, it's not a surprise that when it becomes to shoplifting, that we are talking about repeat offenders. These are not just first-time offenders; these are regular offenders within that field. So I think it makes perfect sense that sometimes, instead of that revolving door of the prison, that a criminal behaviour order is something that is exploited and utilised. It's the power that is what it's actually intended for.
Thank you. If that's all the questions and comments, we have a recommendation, which is that we receive this report and note the successful outcomes achieved in reducing crime and antisocial behaviour, as well as the work in progress to continue to tackle identified priority issues and promote civic pride. So all in favour of receiving the report and noting? Thank you very much. We'll go on to item number 9 now, which is Navigation House update, which is on pages 57 to 64 of your agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. So I'm just going to take you through the Navigation House report. This relates to our homeless accommodation and hub that we are have a project to develop at the moment. So first of all, just to give a bit of background really to the premises. Over the last 6 years, we've unfortunately seen an increase in rough sleepers in the borough. And over that time, though, however, we've been able to increase our support and our services through government rough sleeper initiative funding. So through this, we've been able to introduce new roles of a rough sleeper navigator who works within the borough to engage with rough sleepers and to support them into accommodation and into services. We've got a tenancy sustainment officer that's to support those who are accommodated to maintain their tenancies, preventing the classic revolving door type scenario. And we've also got a support officer to then help with the next steps of getting into things like diversionary activities, into sports, into hobbies, education, training, volunteering, and onwards into work opportunities. So in 2023, we were also able to add to the team a discharge officer who works with prisons and hospitals to better plan discharges where an individual has no safe accommodation to go to. We used to see scenarios where people were discharged on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock with nowhere to go. So we've been working hard to try and support in those circumstances. And also a mental health worker who's been vital in supporting with mental health needs and with getting into mental health services. The really big gap, though, that we've got in the borough is that we have no off-the-street accommodation. So nowhere to offer individuals who are engaging with us and who are ready to make the changes that they need to turn their life around, but they need the support to achieve it. So we had an opportunity back in 2022 to bid to the Shared Prosperity Fund, an opportunity to bid for a capital project for providing that accommodation that was our really big gap, and we were fortunate in securing that funding. This led us to the not insignificant challenge of finding a suitable premises, a premises that was adaptable to meet the potential use, that was in the right location, and that we could achieve within the timescales that were set through the Shared Prosperity funding. absolute perfection of a premises was never going to happen. However, we did eventually identify International House at Stubbsgate as having many positives. And subsequently, Cabinet gave us approval to begin the lengthy process of purchasing that premises in September 2023. Following that purchase, we went through the planning process to gain planning permission in September 2024, and that was to operate it as the homeless accommodation and hub for a period of 12 months. And subsequently, Cabinet approved the refurbishment contracts for the premises in January 2025. So as of this week, today, work has now started on the new premises. It has had a name change. It has now been called Navigation House. And as I say, work has now started. So the next steps for us are managing those works on site. This has been undertaken by our colleagues in the regeneration team. And that's really to closely monitor those works to make sure it's to budget, to timescale, and to the specification. So next step is also securing a partner to manage the accommodation. We will be looking for a partner to manage the accommodation side. That's not something that we as a council have the specialist skills in. So we'll be seeking a registered provider partner, someone with a track record in running services to rough sleepers and individuals with complex needs, and for them to, as I say, operate that 12-bedroom accommodation. So we'll be starting that process shortly, as we wish them to be involved in the design and setup of the accommodation. And what they'll also be doing is managing the accommodation to include a 24/7 staff presence with 2 waking staff at night, and ensuring that the CCTV monitoring of the site and access on and off it. They'll also be responsible for developing robust risk assessments and referral processes for residents, and ensuring each resident has a robust plan, wraparound services and support. And ultimately, throughout the time of their stay, that they have move-on options, because this is accommodation for a short period, up to 2 years, in order to help people to be supported to move on into more general needs accommodation, and whether they can then plan the rest of their lives. So a big step is also ensuring local resident involvement. Excuse me a second. So we did have an open house in October 24 when we invited the local residents to come and meet the homeless team colleagues. The police attended. We had a walk around the building, we had a look at the plans, discussed concerns, and also able to come up with some methods to support those concerns. And we will be continuing to have those engagement sessions as the work progresses. And the neighbours do, excuse me, have contact details for the contractors who are on site. Excuse me. We are very acutely aware of the 12-month planning permission status and the need to ensure that this facility is run in a way that is compatible with its purpose, but also compatible with its neighbourhood. And so the recommendation to the report is to receive the update contained within it, but also to receive an open invitation to visit the premises, to see the work that's been completed, but also to see it once it's in operation, to see how it is being managed, to see how the residents are having new impacts on their life in terms of the facilities that are provided there. And there's also an open invitation to visit our homeless hub, which runs at the Salvation Army premises in town on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings, again to find out a bit more about the work of the team and to meet individuals who are being supported through that work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have we got any councillors wishing to ask questions or comments? Councillor Wilkes.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you and welcome this. When I'm not sitting here, I've actually dealt with the homeless. I'm not after a job in the industry I'm working. And one of the biggest things we keep saying when they're put in, and they're put in by all councils, Liverpool, Manchester, we still deal with them all, is that they need a social worker on site. Because when they fall off the wagon or anything else, you know, they go, they need somebody there to talk to help them. Where I really appreciate you having two on at night. They only have one ugly bugger on at night, and it's me. So yeah, well, the girls aren't ugly. It's only me that's ugly. So yeah, it's really welcome. And there's actually in Norway, I think it was, where they actually did this on a not just a house style. It was a little estate. They use prefabs, which we won't go into that. And they had a 90% successful rate. So I do look forward to seeing a decent rate. And I'm glad you've done it. And just on the off chance, the only council that ever rang to find out if people had turned up in the hotels and to find out whether or not they'd caused any trouble was Newcastle. The others just didn't bother. Well done.
That's great feedback. Thank you.
Councillor Rees.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Gillian. Thanks for taking us through that. I'll make it quick. Just on the finding a suitable service provider, just wondered how that's progressing. And is that going to be via tendering framework?
It is, yes. We're just finalising the specifications at the moment in order to go out to tender for that, yes.
Okay, thanks. And obviously the provider will be responsible for running the provision on the intensive housing management model that's funded through Housing Benefit. Is that also funded through the Shared Prosperity Fund as well?
It is, no, it is designed to be self-funding in the future because the Shared Prosperity Fund is for a finite time. So we didn't want to be dependent on kind of external funding streams. We wanted to make it able to be self-financing so that we set up something that can be ongoing into the future.
So will there be any service charge then for residents?
It's a supported accommodation module. So the elements of care that they receive is supported through the housing benefit process. Right,
okay. And just one other quick question. But obviously getting to that second planning permission, will we be collecting data on the number of alcohol-related incidents, drug-related incidents, and total number of ASB incidents as well?
Yes, we will certainly be monitoring everything in regards to activities on the site, to any security incidents, liaison with the residents, the neighbours. So very much so, yes, we will be engaging in a lot of monitoring through that period.
That's good to hear because it's going to be, really kind of of value to those residents as well. Thanks for that.
Any more? Councillor Wheeldon.
Just excuse me, caught your cough. Just a thought, one of the greatest difficulties with this sort of project, and I'm full of admiration for what you've done, Gillian, it's absolutely brilliant, is the consistency of funding long term. Because the worst thing you can do is give people hope in a situation that's better and then for it to stop. So that's a concern to me. The other thing is, I don't know much about it at all, and I'm probably barking up the wrong tree, and you will know everything about this. But I know the Prince of Wales has recently launched a project about homelessness, whether it's got funding attached to it that we could bid for or something like that to give consistency, not just for the housing, but for ancillary things that you might need to pay for alongside it as things improve for the people who are using the facilities. I just wondered whether that would be worth investigating at all. Not that I know anything about it, I've just seen it on the telly like most people.
It's certainly useful because ongoing funding is obviously a consideration, and that's why we've set it up in the intensive housing model so that it can be funded through housing benefit. But equally, the team that I've talked about, and there's also a team lead within that, Cresswell Army, who's done all of this work and is the one who's to be credited for it. But we seek that money from the Russell Leaper Initiative, which is government funding, which we bid for essentially every 3 years. So, for example, we've had our government advisor visit us today, who's gone to look at the hub and is pleased with the progress we're making there. But we need to keep demonstrating to government that we are achieving in order to keep being successful in that ongoing funding. And it is a difficulty for us because when we're in 3-year funding streams, we get really good staff, really passionate staff engaged with the council. But every 3 years, there's a little vulnerability about whether we'll get that funding for the next 3 years. And we really don't want to lose people because of that. So, yes, it is a difficult area for us to keep maintaining the funding. And we had the visit from the Countess of Wessex last year, I think it was, to the hub. So yes, we're all for engaging royalty in any of our openings or ongoing funding bids.
Need to have a word with Wills.
We've got someone on it.
Thank you, councillors. If there's no more questions or comments, we'll look at the recommendations, which are that we receive the report, we undertake a tour of Navigation House once the building works are completed, and that we undertake a further site visit once the accommodation and policy has been ongoing for several months as part of the further application. So all in favour of accepting those recommendations? Thank you very much. So item 10 is the future work programme. As you see, we're such a productive committee. We've put so much on this meeting that if you look at the one for the next meeting, it says no items currently scheduled. But I would add to that, before we even start saying that, we will have the report from the Task and Finish group then, I would hope. We will also have, hopefully, a significant Wally's Quarry update coming then. I'd also make a suggestion for committee, which is that we've had some really brilliant reports from the fire service. Perhaps, given what we said about antisocial behaviour earlier and reports on that, perhaps we could invite the Borough Commander for Police to come and talk to us, especially because I saw we talked about the off-road bikes and the future possibly with the new bill coming through. I actually saw Midlands Today the other day, a report from Kidsgrove about the damage that had been done to a green space. So that also comes under our environmental remit. If we maybe have the Borough Commander at least send him an invite and see what we can do about that and question about antisocial behaviour and specifically looking perhaps at the off-road bike situation. But if any councillors have any more to add to the work programme, Councillor Brown.
I know I already mentioned that work that Stafford Borough are doing, but this week saw the announcements about the rollout of the breakfast clubs in schools, and as that's got a massive implication for health and well-being of children in our borough, I'd like us to put it on and to investigate whether any Newcastle schools will be on the first wave, which starts in April. So I'd really like us to be looking at that and looking at the benefits and how it's being rolled out in our own borough.
Okay, so an update on the rollout of the free breakfast clubs in the borough. Okay, because I'm aware there are several schools that are trialling it, aren't there, in the borough? Okay, thank you. Any other councillors wish to add to the work programme? Got a few good ideas there. All right. Thank you very much. We'll go to item 11, which is public question time, which I've not been made aware of any questions submitted. Item 12, urgent business, which I've not been made aware of. So it just leaves item 13, which is date of next meeting, which is the 12th of June, 2025. And that concludes this night's agenda, and I can close the meeting. Thank you very much.